ethics are very individualistic.
due to the fact that many people have many different opinions.
However, when on the topic of scientific ethics, there are general rules set within the scientific community that dictate whether something is good or bad.
But if one were to peer into the past events of human history, one would see that some have chosen to break these ethics. But before we start, I would like to point out that all the information that we give to you later on is not correlated whatsoever to either of our morals.
This information is purely based around the set standards, as we discussed earlier, set within the scientific community. Let's begin. Shall we?
Yes.
Animal testing and experimentation. Animal testing can be beneficial. However,
Scientists only resort to animal testing
when suffering is reduced on the test subjects. Also, when any other way of retrieving the same information or arriving at the same result is not possible, or to say the least, not easily obtained.
But scientists won't experiment on animals because it's unacceptable when more pain is caused to the animal than what is needed to reach the overall goal of the experiment. And also when the benefits to human beings are not proven through any scientific means. Then lastly, scientists will not test on animals when there is another way to reach the same results of the experiment. In other words, if an animal does not need to be tested on to reach the same results, then it is considered unethical to test on an animal. The video you are about to witness is an example of a situation that goes against the ethics of animal testing.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Dog seems to have medium-sized tumor on midsection. Tumor seems to be in late stage of tumor growth, which means that this dog fits the requirements for the testing of our new vaccine. So, let's go. Now it's time to administer the vaccine.
Now we must wait. The subject has been given a sedative just strong enough to leave him immobile. It appears that this tumorous cancer growing out of his left abdominal section is not going down. It's not decreasing. This vaccine has obviously not worked, and if anything, the tumor is growing more and more rapid. This dog is no longer any use to us. We must put him down.
In the scientific community, scientists have not always followed the scientific ethics of human testing and we will explain to you an example from our past of humans being tested on in an unethical situation.
And now we'll discuss Nazi experimentations during World War II and how some scientists did not behave ethically. During World War II, some Nazi concentration camps held experiments on humans. One director at the concentration camp known as Auschwitz went by the name of
Dr. Edward Wirths.
The way some Nazis justified these experiments include the following.
Helping Nazi military personnel in combat by developing new weapons and new methods to aid injured soldiers in recovering.
Now, bear in mind, this is how the Nazis, that is, at least some of the Nazis, justified their actions, which, in our standards, these actions would be considered very, very unethical, and at some points even utterly cruel.
But during the Nazi trials, there were many experimentations done, not only by Dr. Edward Wirths, but many other scientists as well.
Many experiments were done on twins to discover the similarities and differences in the genetics of these twins. Joseph Mengele performed experiments on over 1,500 sets of imprisoned twins. As it turned out, only 200 individuals survived the studies.
Also, there were another set of experiments, which were known as the freezing experiments, which were conducted by Professor Ernst Hausner and Dr. Sigmund Rascher. They performed these experiments to find out how long it would take the lower body to reach a temperature that would cause death, and also how to resuscitate the victims. The victims of these trials were stripped naked and dropped into a vat of cold water, which was slowly starting to freeze. These victims would slowly start to experience the effects of hypothermia, and many died.
Ethics of cloning. There are several questions that can be brought up while on the discussion of cloning. Does a person have free will? Should the individual be valued as a unique living specimen? If God exists, would this clone be granted the right into heaven? Many of these questions can only be answered by the individual themselves. We're not going to go too deep into how cloning works, mainly due to the reason that this is a video on ethics. So, without further ado, let's begin. Within the scientific community, there are three categories of cloning. The first is what is known as recombinant DNA cloning. This is also called by many other names, such as just regular DNA cloning, molecular cloning, or gene cloning. This type of cloning is done when a DNA fragment from one organism is placed in a self-replicating genetic element such as a bacterial plasmid. Another type of cloning is known as therapeutic cloning. This is performed when stem cells are taken from an embryo. The purpose of this is to study human development and treat diseases. Lastly, we have reproductive cloning. The purpose of genetic cloning is to reproduce an animal with the same DNA as another.
cloning. The government has spent millions of dollars on you just to reproduce you, and you're out running around killing innocent people. Calm down right now. Get up. Move.